thank you all for having me. As I said, my name is Ryan Flynn. I'm a Masonic artist. I've been a Mason since 2010 and been doing Masonic art since 2012. I started off with doing some stained glass windows up in Nashua and got some notoriety for that, and all of a sudden I'm selling prints on 6 continents and being asked to speak in a lot of places, so it's kind of taken over my life. Ask my wife. What I want to talk to you today is something that a lot of people don't actually discuss in Masonic lodges. Where do we come from? Who are we? Who are we descendants from? Everyone here, or any Mason in here, and probably the families and friends of Masons have heard that, you know, Freemasons were based off of stonemasons who would travel to different build sites and have secret handshakes that they would say, hey, I know how to do stuff. That's not the case. It was one of the worst things I discovered in my research, that the handshakes and all that stuff and the passwords, the Freemasons invented them. They came around in Scotland when Freemasonry was already around. So, unfortunately, that was one of the worst things I discovered. I was really detached to that concept. But what I discovered in the process, I love so much more. Who are we? Where do we come from? Where does Freemasonry and our ideas come from? Well, before we start this presentation, we have to understand something very, very easy for some and difficult for others to understand. What makes up Freemasonry isn't owned by Freemasonry. The discussion that was having before when we were talking about all these ideas like Kabbalah and stuff, that exists, that knowledge is out there. But the funnel that it has come to, where it's portrayed to us, is Freemasonry. So you have to understand that these concepts that we talk about in the lodge, which makes up our ritual, are older than what we call Freemasonry. But where did it come together? Where did it first start forming into Masonic lodges? And that's what I want to talk about today. Edgar Degas, the famous French impressionist, once said, "Art is not what you see, but what you make others see." I love this quote. Some of the greatest works of art that lie around us, we don't know what the artist was thinking. But we know that it presents a message to us. Something very, very specific, whether it be religious, whether it be mythology, going into ideas of Platonic, religious. All of this art makes us feel something very specific. It passes along specific knowledges, much like our Masonic lodges. So let's look at these different sources. The first one I want to talk about is actually Masonic, like masonry, stone masonry. Where did that come from? Well, we know that since time immemorial, stone has been used to build a lot of things. In the Middle Ages, when I'm going to be focusing on for this presentation, stonemasons operated a lot different than others. Now, the word Freemason comes from free stonemason. It's a French term. This is where I talk about the coolest thing I discovered. What are free stonemasons? Well, free stonemasons were actually masons who worked in free soft stone. Stone that's not connected. It's been quarried, put on the site, and it's worked in space. So who are those people? Who are the master stone sculptors? Artists. Freemasons were originally artists. The master builders of free stones were sculptors. Stained glass window artists. Plasterers. All that ornamental stuff that gets put on there were Freemasons' works. You have to understand that the term artist didn't come around until the Renaissance. Before that, you were just a craftsman. The Renaissance made the artist an artist and put that kind of fame and power into his hands. So before that, you were just a craftsman. So stonemasons differed from a lot of other kinds of crafts back in the day. If you were in the Lowell Guild, which was probably one of the most financially sound places to be, you didn't really need to learn much other than how to take wool off sheep and put it on, weave it together, learn your trade. You have to learn your trade, obviously. But stonemasons were different. To become a master or a craftsman, you had to learn the liberal arts and sciences. It was part of your tutelage. So when someone came out to be an actual master mason, in Italian it's called capomastro, you had to be knowledgeable in all this different stuff. You had to know physics, you had to know geometry, you had to know astronomy, you had to know how to delineate heights of buildings. We actually have records in France of the first Masonic offense in history, where someone shared the secrets of a master mason and was thrown out of the craft. And that secret was, he told someone else how to use the distance from a building plus the angle to figure out the height of a bell tower. Basic geometry. But it was a hidden secret to our operative brothers. That happened in France near Chartres. So, with all of this tutelage in the liberal arts and sciences, you came to see these wonderful buildings that would be built that obviously took some skill. Has anybody in here ever put a chisel up to a piece of marble? It's easy, right? It's like so easy, you just learn it in a day. No, it's an art form in itself. So when you look at stuff like this, you see the hours, the years, the decades of work and study that come into this. That's just the operative part. Now let's look at what's in it. Has anybody ever heard of the harmony of the spheres? Someone shoot it out.
The mathematical or vibrational ordering of the planet and all matter.
Yes. So our brother Pythagoras, who's mentioned in our ritual as one of the first Masons, came up with this notion that there is a mathematical harmony between spheres, the vibrations of moving around. And it comes to make harmony in pretty much everything, especially in the musical scale. The planets come out and it comes out mathematically. And this notion was known since obviously the times of Pythagoras and probably before. Here is a very simplified version of the harmony of the spheres. I've taken out some diagonals and some horizontal spheres just so you can see it. So if I take this pattern and I stretch it out like this, then I rotate it 360 degrees. All of a sudden this simple mathematical, not simple, this mathematical equation becomes the west window of Chartres Cathedral. Huh. I thought it was just a pretty window. So the passers-by, everybody who goes through this beautiful masterpiece of Masonic art, every day they see this window with Christ the Redeemer in the middle, surrounded by Christian symbols, some saints. They see an homage to God. But to the trained eye, to the initiated eye, as I like to call it, we see an amazing mathematical equation in front of us. Something that people today still can't really grasp. But it's right in front of everybody's eyes. The Masons knew this stuff. And I'm going to show you a couple other examples. You'll like this one. Here we have the floor plan of Chartres. I'm trying so everybody can see. The floor plan of Chartres Cathedral. As I said, one of the absolute masterpieces of Masonic art. If we take away the noise and I show some of the original building, the original size, match that with key structural parts, something starts to appear. Does anybody recognize that shape? One of the largest churches in Christendom, built around the time when thoughts like Kabbalah, Neoplatonism, and that stuff could get you burned at the stake, is based off of Kabbalah. Huh. I always like to say, like, they could have got some of these guys, right? Yeah, I'll build you a church. But this shows that there's serious knowledge in here that is not for everybody's eyes, but it's clearly been passed down from generation to generation.
It gives new knowledge to the Stations of the Cross.
Absolutely. That was cut out of this presentation because I have a time constraint. But here it is today. Here's the window here. And Chartres Cathedral, like I mentioned, works in all the symbolism and stuff that's out of this world. There's the liberal arts and sciences are portrayed on the door frames. A lot of other Masonic stuff just out there for you to look at. You just kind of got to know what to look for. Again, with the harmony of the spheres coming out to musical notes, this is Rouen Cathedral's flying buttresses. The levels of the flying buttresses come out to the mathematical equations of a musical scale. Someone here can figure that out for me? If I can figure out how to do this, I'd love to work it into some of my art. But I can paint, not do math. So let's look at another concept. This is Monte. Beautiful Gothic cathedral. This is the facade. So let's look at it a little bit deeper. So one could say that the Gothic archway is a representation of the Vesica Pisces. And it kind of looks the same. I kind of don't buy it a lot, but it's worth noting. But I want you to do note that the rose window is used as kind of the general measure for the rest of the building. So let's take a look a little differently. What I'm going to do here is I'm going to draw these lines. And these lines are going to extend from different horizontals. Horizontals were built in a lot of churches. Do you ever notice that almost all these churches have these horizontals going? Basically, they serve a function. It's not really just ornamental. When you were building a building, you had to make sure it was level. So the idea was you'd build up 12, 15 feet, do it horizontal, make sure it's level. Okay, we're good, go. If you don't do that, you get the Leaning Tower of Pisa. And you can see the horizontals in that if you ever climb it. It's pretty interesting. The tower isn't leaning, it's kind of just bent. They kept trying to fix it. So, if I take these horizontals and put these marks on here, it doesn't really mean anything. Has anybody ever heard of phi or phi if you speak Greek? Anyone? Someone mentioned something about it.
Perfect ratio.
The perfect ratio, 1.618. It's a number that falls into nature, aesthetics, the human body. Da Vinci worked with it a lot. Basically, 1.618 is called God's number. If you use the Fibonacci spiral, the ratio keeps repeating itself and it goes up. And this was worked into a lot of different art forms. The Greeks were favorites of this. You ever wonder why a Greek statue always looks the same? Like all the bodies are identical, but the faces are different? It's because they used phi to determine the perfect body. Here's the perfect church. Phi worked into it. This sacred numerology put right in front of everybody. Interesting. It must be a coincidence. I mean, they only did it 6 times here, and it's found in every other place. But this was the kind of knowledge that Masons were passing along to each other. This was stuff that wasn't talked about outside of the lodge. Here it is today. So, again, for the normal passerby, you see this beautiful facade of a late Gothic cathedral. Gorgeous church. But to us, now that we've looked into it a little bit more, we see an amazing homage to sacred geometry and God's ratio. A picture of God, if you will. Now, Master Masons, before the Renaissance, weren't really much of celebrities. In fact, you just kind of did your job. This is Anton Pilgrim, who is the one of the chief architects of the Vienna Cathedral, who just happened to put a self-portrait in one of the walls. And if you notice, he's holding his square and compass here. Interesting. What it really comes down to is these guys knew how to build on a level that we still can't comprehend today. And that's hard for a lot of people to grasp. We all think now with computers and all this modern technology that we just know everything, and that's not the case. Case in point is Filippo Brunelleschi, the man who started the Renaissance. The Renaissance can be attributed to this man, a master mason. He decided that he was going to build this dome. This church was built in the 1200s, and when they decided to build the church, as the Duomo of Florence, they didn't really know what to do with it. They knew they wanted a dome. They didn't know how to build a dome, so they did what any responsible builder would do. They just left a 160-foot hole in the roof of it for 100 years. Snow, rain, anybody, it doesn't matter. You're in church. Stop complaining. Filippo was a goldsmith, and a clockmaker. And he somehow discovered how to do this. He built this dome without scaffolding, without a centering device, and this building was off-center. It's the largest masonry dome in existence till this day, and it was built in the 1400s. No one knows how he does it. We still don't understand. We know the general concept. He put a dome on the inside and built the other one up on top. But the knowledge that he expressed in doing this, he didn't tell anyone. He started inventing stuff, like the transmission. He figured out a way to build a hoist where you didn't have to change the oxen's directions so that you could lift and lower at the same time, basically inventing a transmission. Now, one of the funniest stories about this guy is he had a big rival in Florence, Lorenzo Ghiberti, who always tried to take over the job. He'd say, look at this guy, he has no idea what he's doing, he's going to get everybody killed, this thing's going to fall in on itself, and Filippo would get fired from time to time. And then Lorenzo would take over and immediately start screwing things up. So when they went to Brunelleschi on several occasions to ask his help again, even though he was fired, Brunelleschi would all of a sudden be on his deathbed. And the priest would be called, and last rites would be given, and the poor man would be ready to meet his fate. But then he'd get hired again, and the most amazing healing process in existence would happen. A miracle, if you will. And Brunelleschi would be back in the job saving the day. He did live to see the whole thing completed with the exception of the lantern. It is an amazing work of art. You can actually climb up in between it and go to the top. If anybody here ever gets a chance to go to Florence, it's 400 steps, it's worth every step. You can actually see how he works these herringbone patterns and bricks into it, where he forces the weight of the building instead of down to spiral around. This is knowledge in the 1400s. It's amazing. And it still stands today as the largest solely Masonic building in the world, dome in the world. It's massive. So, getting back to the arts in Florence, this is where the magic happens with Masonic, what we call Freemasonry. There's a theory that goes out here that most people actually think that Masonry comes from England or France. I tend to believe that it comes from Florence, Italy. And I'll tell you why. Florence was ruled by the Medici for a time, the wealthiest family in the world. They were bankers, and they made people like the Pope owe them money. So guess what? They're going to spend. So yeah, we'll keep loaning you. So they made a ton of money, and they made a ton of enemies too. But what they did with their money is start funding knowledge. And what they did is they brought in esoteric knowledge for the first time since the Library of Alexandria. Men like Cosimo Medici, who's on the left, and Lorenzo the Magnificent on the right, took this knowledge in and started forming schools. The Neoplatonic School of Florence, where things like Kabbalah, Neoplatonic thought, Greeks, all this stuff, Egyptian, all brought together for the first time, and they were translating it and putting it in one place. And who did they teach? Who was the people who were always around Lorenzo and those guys? Artists. They hired artists like crazy to do art. One of the few people that I will mention, well, the only person I'll mention in particular of these people that they brought together was Pico Mirandola, who was one of the chief teachers of Neoplatonic thought. He kind of brought this idea of, the easiest way to explain it is a ladder, where you have God at the top and the devil at the bottom. Traditional thought puts man in the middle, in between. But to him, his idea was that man could be both. Through effort, self-study, and self-identification, you could raise yourself up to be a creator like God, or you can turn yourself into a devil. And this thought, which was taught to Michelangelo especially, started showing up all of a sudden everywhere in Renaissance art. And this is the stuff that makes up what we now teach in Masonic lodges. So let's look at it. Leonardo da Vinci. There's the first guy. He knew how to use a compass. This is actually another artist who was in Siena a couple of years before it, but it's kind of the same idea, using geometry to understand the human condition. This is actually a very, very metaphorical drawing. It's a little too deep to get into today, but think about, has anybody ever heard of squaring a circle? Mathematically, it's very hard to do. Basically, because of the complexities of pi, it's not easy unless you have today's technology. Leonardo had figured out how to do it using the human body, using the center of the man, the navel, under stress, makes a perfect circle. The ratio of the height of the legs to the outstretched arm makes a square. If you put them over on top of each other, all of a sudden it lines up. That's really interesting. This is his reverse writing, who he'd write backwards so that he could understand it better. And if you ever want to know how smart this guy was, By looking at his codexes and seeing the smudge work on it, they can actually tell that at some points he was sketching with one hand and writing with the other at the same time. When I teach kids once in a while, and I put $100 on the table. Like, come on, anybody does that right now? Not happened yet, thank God. Something I do not want to explain no way. But let's look at what's in here. All of a sudden, Florence starts producing all these artists, and artists start copying artists from Florence. And the great High Renaissance is born. Looking at this, the School of Athens by Raphael. It's an amazing work of knowledge. It's actually a story. If you look just a hint at what it means, we have a person running in on the left who's young, and a person running out on the right who's old. He's passing through this knowledge. But if we look at it closely for Masonic things, all of a sudden we see stuff that's really cool. Like, for example, Pythagoras here, using his compasses on a tracing board with two globes behind him. And behind him, Artisan. Right there is Raphael himself, staring there, looking and smirking at us like he knows something. What could he know? Again, we have two people standing in the middle, Plato and Socrates. One's pointing up to the heavens, one's covering below, as above as below. That gets into alchemy. And to some Masons here, if you combine them, you start to see something else. Next, we have the handing of the keys of heaven to St. Peter. An interesting piece. It was done for the Sistine Chapel, and it was commissioned by Pope Sixtus himself. Pope Sixtus also happens to be a guy who tried to kill Lorenzo the Medici, who knew the artist in question. So, for another discussion, there's the murder of Lorenzo's brother happening in the background there. Just to remind the Pope, yeah, I know what you did. But again, all of a sudden, if we look closer, we start to see Masonic images. The square, the compasses. Now we know that the compasses where the square and compass was used as esoteric knowledge by this point because of the Bear Bridge square that was found in Ireland. So we know this knowledge is out here, and Florence was a hub of knowledge and trade routes. So people were meeting here. Things were being discovered. There happened to be a Neoplatonic school in the area. Interesting. Giorgione's three philosophers, a Venetian artist. A Venetian artist who studied with Bellini, who also knew Da Vinci. All of a sudden, we have this one painting who was commissioned by a banker who was full of who wanted to be, kept commissioning esoteric stuff. We have this amazing work of art that is a testament to forbidden knowledge and what we now call Masonry. Let's look at it very, very quickly. We have the young man holding the square and compasses, looking at nature through the lens of geometry. We have the middle-aged man standing atop, looking forward. And we have old age, holding his studies. Now let's look at the colors. We have the green tones, the earth tones, the leads. We have the red tones, the fire, of alchemy. And finally coming out as gold. Interesting. We have the three steps. And the kicker, in this time frame, a lot of paintings were done by relatively minor biblical studies, biblical characters. You'd see saints that you wouldn't normally hear about in art before. Someone brought up the notion that this might be Hiram Abiff, Hiram, king of Tyre, and King Solomon. Possibly. Doesn't really look like a king. But about 20 years ago, X-rays were getting used and everything, and they scanned in this man right here and found that a crown was painted over it. Interesting. And if we look at other Giorgione's paintings where he does actually paint King Solomon, he looks just like him. So there we might have an actual firm Masonic piece of artwork. I'd love to get into this more. I have a whole presentation on it, but as friends here have seen it, and that one takes a while to look at. Here we have in detail again, the square and compass, observing. The man standing, thinking. And the man holding the compass and his learnings, which also featured the sun, the moon, and more mathematical principles, ready to teach the younger people, looking back at them. It's a beautiful, beautiful work of art. Moving on from the Renaissance, we start seeing more and more Masonic art pop up. Does anybody know who did these? William Blake, yes. William Blake loved the compasses. And the compasses don't necessarily mean that it's Masonic in nature as we like to think of Freemasonry. The compasses have been used from time immemorial to measure and stuff like that. It's a tool of learning. So just because you see a compass doesn't necessarily mean that it's Masonic. But William Blake adds other things to his work, like the sun, the moon, the stars, man, opposites. All stuff that we hear in our ritual. And it continued further past this. Everything you see here was done by a Mason. Beautiful works of art, which put Masonic thought into it. Let's look at a couple. Brother Mark Chagall, anybody ever heard of him? He was, yep, okay. He was a Jewish artist who kind of did surrealist art in the 20th century. Started putting stuff into his art because he was a Freemason. For example, like the rings on the white crucifix of the ladder happen to have 3. Perhaps it's in the Masonic symbol. Jacob's ladder, the 3 rings. Anybody remember what the 3 rings are? Faith, hope, and charity. Principles of Freemasonry. Candles in the triangular position. And my favorite, his self-portrait, which was done after he became a Mason, where he has 7 fingers. Whoa. Interesting. Now, you got to understand, drugs were good. There was a lot of drugs going on at this time, but art is not, speaking as an artist, I don't put things into my work as mistakes. I don't accidentally put something in there just because I need to fill space. When I do my artwork, I think about it on the whole and try to come up with stuff that means something. Everything in my paintings means something. And I know that other artists feel the same way. So when I see 7 fingers in an artist's self-portrait, I think, what do those 7 fingers mean? 7 liberal arts and sciences. It's only done in one hand, so it's not like he just couldn't count. He knew what he was doing. It continues into America. Think about this. Brother Bartholdi's Statue of Liberty over New York Harbor. The first thing that millions and millions of immigrants saw coming into this country was a work of art by a Mason. Interesting. Brother Thomas Cole, founder of the Hudson Valley School, one of the most prolific artist movements in American history, put sacred numbers, just like those stonemasons did, into his works. You just have to look for it. Here we have this beautiful pillar, the Pillar of Beauty, if you look at the capital of it. And if you take the Fibonacci spiral, it comes right to the source of light. Again, it's Masonic art that doesn't need a square and compass on it. I'm a firm believer that if you put a square and compass on something, it doesn't make it Masonic. You can buy stuff that really shouldn't exist with square and compasses on it. But the real Masonic art, I truly believe, is stuff that doesn't need a square and compass to tell you it's Masonic. You just have to look through your initiated eyes to see it. So let's look at another one, The Architect's Dream by Thomas Cole. We have Egyptian, moving through Greek, Roman, past him on the Pillar observing, and coming up in Gothic. This is an homage to the history of architecture. Beautiful work. I was doing this presentation in Colorado, and this is one story I'll tell about here, and I got up and I was talking specifically about this painting, and I said, well, how many Gothic cathedrals do you think there are in Cairo? And this old guy, fixes his tie, stands up, and he goes, 7. I was like, really? He goes, no. Keep going. I'm friends with that guy now.
What year was that done approximately?
It was in the 19th century. That was actually turned down by its commissioner because it was too esoteric, by the way. Makes me think, I don't think that. Again, another work of Masonic art, done by a father and son team of Masons. Features 2 Masons. It's work of Masonic art. It's the ideals of America put into one work of art, and it features half of a Mason. Maybe that's a statement, maybe it isn't, but it's worth noting, and it's worth discussing. Continuing around again, more Masonic art. We have Brother Ezra Ames, the famous portrait artist, and here is his portrait of another brother, Brother Jean-Antoine Proudhon, who stood and sat in lodge with Washington and Lafayette and did their portraits. Masons were hiring Masons to do art. It was important to them. And buildings were erected, just like the one that we're in here today, like the temple in Detroit, one here in Boston, and even my lodge up in Nashua, New Hampshire. All of a sudden we see not just buildings where Masons meet, but the buildings that were designed to be Masonic halls. Aspects of architecture take in Masonic themes, studies, and they're put in here. These are Masonic buildings, not buildings where Masons meet. And these buildings were covered in murals for a time. Just like the stained glass artists of our forefathers, ideas were presented to newly made candidates and visitors. Who are we? Where do we come from? What do we hold important? Where do we want to go? Why do we meet? All done through the lens of art. And finally, we funded the arts too. It goes without saying that pretty much everybody in here knows that the Freemasons helped fund and build the Washington obelisk and the Friend to Friend Memorial in Gettysburg. All funded by artists. If we weren't building it, if we weren't doing it, we were supporting it. And we made sure that our communities knew that that was important. Because art, ladies and gentlemen, is the lens of our civilization. Everything we hold dear, everything that's been put in front of us, has gotten that way through the lens of art. Even for Christians, the Bible. The Bible was on decline for a while. Historically speaking, when it fell. But because of the illuminated documents of the Celts, it started to revive itself coming out of the British Isles and back into mainland Europe. There's an amazing book called How the Irish Saved Civilization. Read it. I'm Irish, so I had to read it. That's the title. But it's a great book, and it explains that this artisanship of the Bible brought that idea back into what we now call Christianity. It's all through the lens of art, and Masonry is no different. So I'm going to end with this. Something happened in the last 50 years. How many of you can name another Masonic artist other than me? Where did we go? I know we have a couple of hands up. What happened to us? Why aren't the artists, the musicians, coming into me? Where are our Mozarts? Where are our Thomas Coles? What happened? Now some can say that it's, money's tight, membership is down, it's really hard to fund the arts when you've got 2 people in your lodge. I think it's a lot simpler than that. We need to start talking about this stuff again. How many times in your lodge have you talked about a work of art? How many times in your lodge have you attracted the arts to your lodge? It's not that hard and it's not that costly to do this. If you want to talk to me after this, there are great ways to bring the arts back into your community. Hire musicians from a local college to come play at your lodge. Show those musicians that you mean that Masonry holds music so deeply in our thoughts that we mention it in our ritual. Study music. Hire lecturers to come in. How many here, raise your hands, live within 25 minutes of a college? Keep your hands up. How many of them have art departments? Music departments? Drama departments? Talk to them. The last story I'm going to tell you about this presentation, is this. The Grand Lodge of Philadelphia, Pennsylvania and Philadelphia, decided to commission an artwork. And they went to an artist who was pretty well known in the area, and they had him paint a rendition of the Friend to Friend Memorial in Gettysburg. Did an amazing job. It's a grisé printing, grayscale. Looks beautiful, beautiful painting. They had this big ceremony when it came out, and they invited the public. And luckily, they invited a news agency who interviewed this artist. And one of the last paragraphs of this thing was, they said, "Well, what did you think about this?" And they were talking to the artist, and he goes, "I never knew the Masons were like this. I never knew they supported the arts. I joined last week." It's up to everybody in this room to get what we just saw back into Masonry, and it's desperately needed. We need to condense, move forward, and celebrate what brought us out of the Dark Ages into the Renaissance, and maybe even start a new Renaissance. Thank you very much.